Picture this. You're sitting at a dinner table. Maybe, you're at a party with some new colleagues, or perhaps you're in the middle of learning a new language and practicing with a conversation partner.
Oh, that is always a high-pressure situation right there.
Right. So the lighting is low, the vibe is good, the chat is flowing naturally, and then someone turns to you and asks the most universal, seemingly harmless question on the planet. They just ask, "What's your favorite food?"
And instantly, disaster strikes.
Exactly. Suddenly, your mind goes completely, utterly blank. I mean, did you know that in that exact fraction of a second, your brain isn't just searching for a simple vocabulary word, it's actually trying to access the olfactory bulb.
Which is the specific part of your brain that processes smell, right?
Yeah, smell,
Yeah.
and how it links to memory. So you are basically being asked to translate this super complex neurological web of taste, smell, and memory into a single sentence. And if you don't have the precise linguistic tools ready to go, the connection just jams.
Total static. It's like this bizarre neurological traffic jam over literally the most fundamental universal human experience on the planet. Just white noise where your vocabulary used to be.
It's wild. We all eat, every single day of our lives, yet being put on the spot about it triggers this sudden conversational freeze. So today, in this deep dive, we are making it our mission to decode the language of food. We're exploring a YouTube English lesson transcript from Mrs. English channel, and we're pairing that with insights from an article titled "The Art of Conversing About Cuisine."
It's a really great combination of sources, honestly.
It really is. And the goal here is to uncover how mastering the vocabulary of food is not just some, transactional skill you use to order a meal off a menu. It's actually a secret shortcut.
A shortcut to connection, yeah.
Exactly. It's a shortcut to sharing your memories, exploring entirely different cultures, and ultimately forming genuine, warm connections with the people sitting across the table from you. Okay, let's unpack this. If our brains are jamming up at the dinner table, how do we get the traffic flowing?
How do we stop the freeze?
Right. How do we stop freezing up and actually start connecting? Well, the foundational solution, the ultimate icebreaker from our sources, is almost embarrassingly simple. You just add a reason to your preference, you state your favorite food, and then you attach the word because.
Yeah, that why acts as the engine of the entire conversation. Because if you just state a noun, if you just sit there and say, "My favorite food is pizza," the conversation hits a solid brick wall.
You've technically answered the question, sure.
But you haven't offered any thread for the other person to pull on. But if you say, "I love pizza because it's cheesy and comforting," suddenly you've handed the other person a concept they can actually grab onto.
Right. They can relate to being comforted.
Exactly. Or take sushi. If you say, "I love sushi because it's light, healthy, and delicate," almost like a piece of art, you have completely transformed the dynamic of the exchange. You've moved from just a flat data point to a whole perspective.
It's like adjusting the resolution on a television screen, Giving an answer without a why is like forcing the listener to watch your meal in standard definition. It's just flat and gray.
Oh, I like that analogy.
But when you add the why, you are forced to reach for sensory language, and that flips the image into 4K resolution. But I want to dig into the mechanics of this for a second. How does that sensory language actually operate on the person listening to you? Are we just painting a prettier picture, or is something deeper happening there?
Well, what's fascinating here is that sensory words act as a neurological bridge. When you use specific adjectives to describe food, you aren't just reciting a recipe to them. You're actually triggering the listener's own sensory memory banks.
Wait, really? Just by saying the words?
Yeah, words like sweet, spicy, salty, crispy, or creamy, they force the brain to simulate those physical sensations. You bridge the gap between simple auditory information and vivid physical imagination. You're basically recreating the physical experience of the meal inside the listener's mind.
That is so cool. Let's anchor this with the specific vocabulary we have to work with from the sources. Take the word tender. When we use that word, we aren't just saying a steak tastes good.
No, not at all.
Tender implies a physical action. It paints the picture of a knife gliding through meat without any resistance. It's soft and yielding. And then you have a word like savory, which hits that deep, rich umami note on the back of the tongue, which is distinctly separate from anything sweet.
Precisely. The words carry literal physical weight. Look at crunchy. That word is auditory just as much as it is textural.
No, totally.
It's that very specific sharp sound reverberating in your jaw
Yeah.
when you bite into a fresh apple or like a potato chip. Then you have flavorful, which communicates this complex burst of taste just overwhelming the palate.
And spicy too, right?
Yeah, spicy triggers actual heat and pain receptors in the imagination. While fresh communicates something vibrant and crisp, straight from nature, like a bright green salad. And then rich communicates something dense, heavy, and decadent, like a dark, flourless chocolate cake that just coats the roof of your mouth.
I am getting hungry just listening to this. But it goes beyond just taste and texture upon eating, right?
Yeah.
The source's focus on non-taste senses is brilliant. Like, imagine describing the smell of a hearty soup simmering on the stove on a freezing, rainy day.
Oh, that's such a specific feeling.
Or the sound of a cast iron pan sizzling as you crack eggs into it on a Sunday morning. When you describe the sound of breakfast, you're literally inviting the listener into your kitchen. You're creating a shared physical environment out of thin air.
You're building a shared world. And there's a crucial physical component to delivering these words, too. Your physical posture and expression matter immensely. Well, smiling while you talk about food physically alters the shape of your vocal tract. That physical change actually alters the acoustic resonance of how your voice sounds to the listener.
No way. So they can literally hear the smile.
They really can. It makes the delivery sound alive, warm, and natural.
Yeah.
The emotion literally carries the acoustics of the words.
So if sensory words build the physical environment of the meal, what happens when we attach an emotional memory to that physical space? The vocabulary shifts pretty dramatically at this point in the lesson. We move from describing the physical menu to exploring an emotional menu.
Yeah, you see this shift most clearly with advanced emotional verbs. The leap from basic physical necessity to emotional attachment is massive. Take the difference between wanting food and craving food.
Right. I want a sandwich is just a biological statement of fact. It just means my stomach is empty and I need fuel.
Exactly.
But I'm craving a sandwich. That is a completely different landscape.
Because craving is a sudden, strong, undeniable physical desire for a highly specific flavor or texture. It's urgent. It occupies your thoughts. And then there's the adjective mouth-watering.
Oh, that's a great one.
You don't just casually call a plain cracker mouth-watering, The word implies a visceral, physical anticipation. Your salivary glands are literally reacting to the description. We usually reserve mouth-watering for someone else's incredible cooking or a spectacular, out-of-reach restaurant dish. It's pure anticipation encoded into a single word.
Which brings us to the ultimate emotional food concept from the text, comfort food. Comfort food is universally described as food that feels like a warm hug. But I have to push back on this idea for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
When we start talking about comfort food, are we even talking about food anymore, or are we just using food as a convenient Trojan horse to talk about our childhoods and kind of wallow in nostalgia?
That's a fair question. Nostalgia is absolutely a huge part of it, but I wouldn't dismiss it as just a Trojan horse. It's a physiological reality combined with a narrative.
What do you mean by physiological reality?
Consider the biology of it. A lot of classic comfort foods are heavy in carbohydrates and fats, right? Consuming those actually triggers the release of serotonin and dopamine in the brain. It is a literal chemical reaction that produces feelings of safety, lethargy, and well-being. So we are using vocabulary to describe a very real chemical hug.
Wait, so it isn't just a metaphor. The food is actually altering our brain chemistry in that moment to make us feel safe.
Yes, exactly. And when you pair that serotonin hit with a personal story, you transform a basic English sentence into this powerful emotional anchor. Think about someone talking about how their dad used to make homemade pizza on weekends, getting flour all over the kitchen.
Yeah, or how a simple cup of hot chocolate immediately makes them feel like a child coming inside from the snow.
Or a parent making a specific chicken soup when you're sick. The food is the setting, but the story of care and safety is the actual core of the conversation.
Right, you aren't just saying, I like soup. You're saying, this soup represents safety and love in my life. It's profound. But, we can't live entirely in a state of deep emotional nostalgia all the time.
Sadly, no.
Eventually, a natural conversation has to zoom out from the individual emotional dish to our broader daily habits. Here's where it gets really interesting. We start looking at the architecture of our diets through a word like staple.
Yeah, staple is an incredibly useful, slightly more advanced vocabulary word. Because a well-rounded conversation about food doesn't stop at naming a favorite childhood memory. It has to shift to lifestyle patterns. A staple is a foundational, regularly eaten food that anchors your daily diet.
Like saying, pasta is a staple in my house. We eat it at least twice a week. Or looking at how rice and bread function as everyday anchors across the globe. Why do these specific foods become staples in our vocabulary anyway?
It almost always comes down to historical geography and agriculture, which then, of course, shapes the language. Rice became a staple in Asia due to monsoon climates that were perfect for flooded paddies.
Right, that makes sense.
And wheat thrived in the temperate zones of Europe and the Middle East, making bread the anchor there. When you tell someone what your staples are, you're actually revealing a combination of your deep cultural background and your practical daily rhythm.
And exploring those practical rhythms brings up a massive conversational divide in English-speaking cultures. It's the fundamental difference between homemade and takeout or to go.
The cultural weight behind those two terms is substantial. Homemade carries an inherently wholesome, deeply positive connotation. When you describe a meal as homemade, it implies care, time, and deliberate effort. It means someone stood in a kitchen and labored over the ingredients.
While takeout, or ordering in, represents modern survival.
100%.
It's convenience. It's eating restaurant food in sweatpants from the comfort of your own couch after a grueling workday. Comparing how often you cook versus how often you order takeout keeps the conversation flowing so naturally because it invites the other person to share their own weekly survival tactics. You basically connect over the shared exhaustion of modern life.
Exactly. But because food is so deeply tied to our emotions, our childhoods, and our daily routines, talking about it or rejecting it can be a bit of a social minefield.
Oh, for sure.
Because if someone puts their homemade serotonin-inducing childhood dish in front of you and you happen to hate it, you need linguistic tools to navigate that situation without causing offense.
Politeness in these scenarios requires a very specific toolkit. Let's look at the practical side of restaurant and guest etiquette first. If you are ordering at a restaurant, the magic phrases are simple but essential. You use "I'd like" or "can I have" combined with the language of customization.
Customization is key there. Knowing how to politely use with and without. Saying, "Can I have that without onions?" Or "I'd like that with extra cheese." And of course, softening the whole request with "please."
And if you're a guest in someone's home, the vocabulary shifts slightly. You want to validate their effort before you even take a bite. You compliment the host by using words like appetizing or delicious, based purely on the visual presentation or the smell of the room.
Right, before you even taste it.
Yeah, and afterward, a simple "thank you for the meal" or "it was lovely" shows profound gratitude for their labor.
But you are absolutely right about the minefield aspect. What happens when things go wrong? Consider the durian fruit from the article. For those who aren't familiar, the durian is notorious for its incredibly pungent smell. It's widely consumed in Southeast Asia, but the smell is often compared to raw onions or unwashed gym socks.
Yeah, that is a tough one. So if language is meant for connection, how do we politely disconnect from a food we absolutely hate, like a gym sock-smelling fruit, without insulting the person offering it or insulting the culture it comes from?
Well, you employ what we can call the soft decline. When faced with something challenging, instead of freezing, or worse, blurting out, "I hate this," or "this is disgusting," which attacks the food, and by extension, the host, you soften the blow by placing the preference gently on yourself.
So you use phrases like, "it's not really my thing," or "I'm not a big fan of."
Right. You say, "I'm not a big fan of strong smells," or "spicy food isn't really my thing." It completely removes the judgment from the dish. The dish isn't bad, it just doesn't align with your personal quirks.
That's a great way to frame it.
It sounds softer, more friendly, and it saves face for everyone involved. The underlying philosophy here is that politeness and tone matter infinitely more than having perfect textbook grammar. Language is for connection, not perfection.
Connection over perfection.
Yeah.
That is such a vital mindset. And once you have that polite emotional foundation secured, you can start having some real fun with the language. The final step in conversing about food is understanding how it bleeds into broader culture and everyday slang. Food idioms are the absolute secret sauce to sounding natural, confident, and culturally fluent in English.
They really are.
But I don't just want to list them off. I want to know the mechanisms behind them. Why do we say them? Take piece of cake, meaning something is incredibly easy. Why a cake?
The origins of piece of cake likely go back to the 19th century in the American South. In certain communities, actual cakes were given out as prizes in friendly competitions or dances. If you won, you literally got a piece of cake. Over time, the reward became synonymous with an easy, effortless victory.
Okay, that makes sense. What about spilling the beans? If someone is hiding a secret and you want them to confess, you tell them to spill the beans. How did legumes get involved in espionage?
That one is ancient, actually. It traces back to ancient Greece, where citizens would vote anonymously on secret matters by dropping different colored beans into an opaque jar or helmet. White for yes, black for no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if someone clumsily knocked the jar over, literally spilling the beans, the secret vote was prematurely revealed to the public.
That is fascinating. Okay, here's one I hear all the time used for someone who remains remarkably calm under immense stress. Cool as a cucumber.
This is actually a brilliant scientific reality that got turned into an idiom. Cucumbers have an exceptionally high water content. Because of how they retain and evaporate that water, their internal temperature can remain up to 20 degrees cooler than the ambient air on a sweltering summer day.
Wait, 20 degrees cooler.
Yes, so being cool as a cucumber is a literal physiological truth applied to human composure.
It makes so much more sense when you know the why. Then we have the big cheese, referring to the most important person in a company or organization, and a very relatable one, having a lot on your plate. When you are overwhelmed with tasks and incredibly busy, your plate is full. It's such a visual, physical way to describe mental overwhelm.
Using these idioms naturally in conversation shows a deep cultural fluency. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the introduction of the word cuisine expands the horizon of the conversation entirely.
How so?
Well, a cuisine isn't just a single dish or a random ingredient. A cuisine refers to an entire, specific set of cooking traditions, practices, and flavor profiles associated with a distinct region or culture.
So discussing cuisines opens the door to global traditions. We aren't just talking about calories or sustenance anymore. We're talking about philosophy. Like in Japan, the tradition of saying itadakimasu before a meal. It isn't just let's eat. It's a phrase deeply rooted in Buddhism that shows profound gratitude for the entire chain of life.
Right. The plants, the animals, the farmers, the elements, all of it.
Exactly. Everything that sacrificed and labored to bring that food to the table. Or, in Italy, the tradition of the long dinner, where the meal is just an excuse to stay around the table for hours, sharing stories and reinforcing community bonds.
Food becomes the lens through which we explore the world. It reminds us that food isn't just fuel for the machine. It's how people share their history and their love without using direct words. Having the English vocabulary to discuss these cuisines allows you to cross borders and understand someone else's worldview without ever leaving the dinner table.
It is a beautiful way to travel. And as we look at the journey we've taken today, from the initial freeze to exploring global cuisines, I want to highlight a perfect metaphor for this entire process of communication. Learning a language is exactly like cooking.
Oh, it truly is. The first time you try to cook a complex new dish from scratch, you might burn the rice, you might oversalt the soup.
We've all been there.
Right. But the second time, it's a little bit better. The third time, you don't even need the recipe. It's perfect.
Mistakes are just part of the recipe. Every mistake you make when trying to speak, every time you use the wrong idiom or stumble on a sensory word, it just adds flavor to your growth. It's proof that you are actually in the kitchen actively trying to cook up a connection.
Progress does not come from perfection. It comes from the willingness to practice, to make a mess, and to try again.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? It means that whether you are describing a greasy plate of takeout food at 2 in the morning or a healthy homemade staple you eat every single Tuesday, your words become warm and alive when you share what you genuinely love. You just have to keep practicing.
Yeah, keep putting yourself out there.
Use those specific sensory words to paint a picture. Tell the stories from your childhood that explain the chemical hug of your comfort food. Rely on the soft decline when you are faced with a plate of durian, and throw in an idiom to show you are cool as a cucumber.
This raises an important question, though, something for you to mull over after we finish. We've spent this time exploring how the English vocabulary for food shapes how we connect over a meal. We've seen how sensory words and emotional verbs bridge the physical gap between two people.
Right.
But consider this: if the words we use actually physically alter our anticipation, our salivary response, and our memory of a meal. Could learning the complex food vocabulary of a completely different language actually change the way your favorite dish tastes to you?
Oh, wow. Does acquiring a new language actually unlock new flavors in your own mind? Does having a new word for a spice change how your brain perceives that spice? That is a wild, incredible thought to leave on. Keep exploring, keep tasting, and the next time you are at a dinner party and someone asks, "What's your favorite food?" don't freeze, take a breath, smile, and tell them the story of why.